Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast. These are the stories of those who have received, given, and who are waiting for the gift of life, organ transplantation. Now here's your host and heart and kidney recipient, BJ Odom.
Welcome to the Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast, where we explore the extraordinary world of organ transplantation. Each week we share inspiring stories and introduce you to remarkable individuals sharing their own transplant stories. Be sure to support the podcast by leaving a 5-star review and subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. Have a transplant story to share or comments about the podcast? Send us an email, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to connect with us on Facebook, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. This is BJ Odom. You know, the guy with more parts than a chicken nugget? My memoir is packed with laughs, heart, and an unbelievable true story of survival you've heard me talk about right here on the Gift of Life podcast. Get your copy today. More parts than a chicken nugget, available on Amazon. As we welcome you to episode 99. Today on Gift of Life, we're sharing a story that moved fast, really fast. A husband, a father of 3, a pastor from Charlotte, who lived for decades with quiet liver disease, until everything changed in a matter of weeks. Brain fog, emergency rooms, a terrifying diagnosis, and then, just 3 days after being listed, the call for a new liver. This is a powerful reminder that every transplant journey is different. And sometimes second chances come when you least expect them. We'll get started as we talk with Daniel Hill, coming in next. Daniel, it's great to have you on the podcast. And as always, if you would, let's start out by you telling us just a little bit about yourself.
Well, my wife and I, we've been married for 22 years now, and we have 3 kids, live in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina. I was born and raised here in Charlotte. We had a little 6-year detour in Seattle, Washington, where I was working at a church out there. And then during COVID, we moved back here, what we thought was going to be temporary, but ended up being more of a permanent thing. So we're back here in Charlotte and living life. And as my story kind of unfolds, it makes sense now why we ended up in Charlotte. So, but yeah, just that's the very, very short version for me. But yeah, worked in ministry pretty much my whole life. And my wife and I, we met in high school. And then, like I said, had 3 beautiful kids who now are 20, 17, and we have a little 6-year-old, almost 7. He'll tell you 6, almost 7. But.
Yeah, they like to be that. When they're that age, they go, I want to be just a little older. Yeah, I'm 7 now.
A little bit older. Yeah.
And then when we get to be old, like yours truly, it's like, just forget how old I am. It's way past where I need to be.
Yeah, every year for me, it's now, how old am I again? I can't remember, but yeah, 47, just turned 47 for me.
Well, you had a liver transplant. And of course, on this show, we always like to start at the beginning of because everybody's journey is different. So how did the whole transplant and bad liver go for you? Obviously, being a pastor, I don't think it was a drinking problem.
It was not. That's a little bit of my story too, is kind of how so I'll go back to the very beginning. Really, for me, it started when I was born, but we didn't know it. So I was born, not like I said, I'm 47, so 1978. Here in Charlotte, and soon after I was born, my mom noticed that I wasn't gaining weight. I was having a lot of problems keeping food down, or formula and milk and all that stuff. And so at about 6 weeks old, the doctors were kind of going back and forth. They thought, well, maybe I had some sort of hepatitis, or they were really concerned that I had biliary atresia, I think is what it's called. I don't remember any of this. Obviously, I was about 6 weeks old. But as my mom recounts the story to me, they were going between those two things. And really landed on hepatitis. They had to do some exploratory surgery, go in there and see what was going on. And so they really landed on the hepatitis. And so soon after surgery, I seemed to be doing better and really lived a very, very normal life until right before our firstborn was born. I had a kidney stone, and I just went into the doctor, and they did some scans and all that stuff because it was one of those lingering deals, and completely unrelated to the kidney stone. But the doctor said, "Sir, basically, if you don't mind me asking, like, do you have like a drinking problem or anything?" And at that point in my life, I'd never had one drip of alcohol, and the doctor basically said, "Well, your liver is cirrhotic." And at this point, I was 26, I think, maybe 26, 27, something like that. And he said, your liver is really showing some evidence of cirrhosis. And so then they referred me to a hepatologist, and I went through that whole thing. And they said, well, you have some mild cirrhosis of the liver. At some point, we're going to have to do something about this. But in the meantime, you're fine. And in the middle, at that point in life, we're raising a family and moved to Seattle. And for me, to be quite honest, it was never really on my radar. I just lived my life, never really got established with anyone in Seattle. And so lived another almost 20 years before there was any evidence of anything. But then I had some health problems, some minor things that were, I think, unrelated, but that's when things kind of started going downhill. And the doctors wanted to see me. I got established with a new hepatologist here in Charlotte, and the word transplant kind of came up. Hey, we're going to have to deal with this, hopefully in the next maybe 10 years. And then for me, things just got worse really fast. Functionally, I was having a hard time. I was forgetting things more easily. One story that I remember, we were sitting here, the five of us just having dinner, and my daughter had said, "Hey, I got to go in about 10 minutes. And so I was like, okay, that's cool. And so we're just sitting there talking, finishing up dinner. And then at some point I turned to her and I was like, didn't you say you need to leave? Because we've been going here for like 45 minutes. And she was like, what are you talking about? It's been like 8 minutes. And for me, in my brain, I was like, wait, it really felt like 45 minutes. And so then that was like really the first evidence of something weird going on in my brain. I've been putting on weight, having some issues with carrying a lot of fluid in my stomach and my legs. One point, actually, this is kind of gross, but fluid kind of seeping out of my skin and my stomach. Had to go to the emergency room for that. I mean, it was getting bad quick. And this was summer of last year. So we're talking, my appointment when they first told me I had cirrhosis was 2005, 2006. And then here we are, fast forward to summer of 2025. And it all happened really, really fast. Had to go to the emergency room. They did some tests, tried to drain some fluid, sent me home. Then a couple of days later, I'd been sleeping. My wife said I'd slept for like 14, 15 hours. Woke up, just didn't feel right. Just something bad was happening. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't walk. It was like I couldn't feel my legs. It was the most bizarre feeling. So back to the emergency room again. And and I have I have very vivid memories of this. Go to the emergency room. They start to ask me some questions. And one of the first questions was, Mr. Hill, how many quarters are in $1.50? And I could not answer that question. And I'm no mathematician, but I feel I'm pretty good at basic math. And I could not come up with the answer. I was like, it just like nothing would come out. It was and I have very vivid memory of that. And so I remember looking at my wife, she was with me, and just, I could see the tears dripping down her face. Like, this is really bad. And so they admitted me, said that, when you have liver disease, there's this thing called hepatic, I can never say it right. HE, we'll call it that. Those who have liver issues know what it is. But, and basically said, this is when your liver begins to fail, toxins are not getting out of your system. They go to your brain. It causes really some serious brain dysfunction. But so they gave me some IVs, got me back, the fluids out, got the toxins out, sent me home again. And then 2 days later, after they sent me home, sitting down at dinner one night, just again, having dinner with the family, wasn't feeling well, went upstairs and just started throwing up. And that's the last thing I remember that night. Don't remember anything else until I woke up the next morning in a hospital bed, tied down, because I had I'd gone through another HE episode where I basically just completely went into a comatose state. I wasn't functioning, wasn't responding. My wife had to call the paramedics. Apparently I was throwing up. I don't remember any of it. My 17-year-old is holding a vomit bag for me while they tracked down the paramedics. I mean, it was just this very traumatic thing for our whole family. I say it's like, it was the worst day of my life, and I have zero recollection of it. But rushed me to the hospital, woke up the next morning. And funny thing, on that morning, for me, I was like, I didn't know what was. I wake up, I'm in the hospital room, I hear voices. I'm like, did I get a transplant? I had no idea. And I'm like, wait a second, I don't feel any pain. Okay, so something else happened. My wife then kind of explained what had been going on. And again, so they kind of rinse and repeat. They gave me fluids. They got the toxins out. I mean, the whole deal. And again, within, I think 3 days, sent me back home. But that night, the next day, I was starting my liver transplant evaluation at Duke. And that was September the 7th of 2025. And I ended up never going home. And the reason they admitted me when I was at Duke going through evaluation. I met with a cardiologist because through the evaluation, those of you who have been through it, but if you're listening and haven't gone through this process for transplant evaluation, they, make sure that you're sick enough to need the transplant, but that you're well enough that you can survive it, And so for me, the cardiologist said, man, I think you're carrying a good 50 pounds of excess fluid because of this liver disease. And I think we need to get that off of you so you can be at least as strong as possible going into a transplant. And so they admitted me there at Duke, went through that process of getting those fluids off through IVs. And then, like I said, I never went home. The morning of, I was actually supposed to leave. So I skipped one kind of important part, but I found out through this process that of the cirrhosis and the liver disease, I also had developed a tumor, which is somewhat common for transplant patients when they're going into a liver disease. They get this thing called HCC, which is just a liver cancer. And that really expedited the process for me. And so, yeah, the morning of September 22nd, nurse came in, and there was just a lot of confusion that morning because he said, hey, just so you, we're going to get you ready for surgery. And I was like, I don't have a surgery scheduled for today. I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, well, it says here that you're getting a transplant today. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, no, I don't, no one's told me this. Like, and he said, well, that's what it says here. And he said, well, let me go check on something. So he left. And then while he was gone, my phone rang. and there had been some sort of mix up. I didn't get the call that they had a liver for me, but they said, "Hey, I don't know what happened here, but just so you know, there's a liver on the way for you, or it's already here. You're going into surgery in the next basically 2 hours." And so they wheeled me out of there. My wife had actually come back to Charlotte the night before. So again, I'd been on the list, the transplant list at Duke for 3 days, not even 3 days. It was that fast. I mean, it flew by, and it was just a whirlwind of emotions and just a lot of craziness that day. But took me back. I was texting my wife. She was driving up. Didn't get to see her before I went in. And of course, there's a lot of fear going into a major surgery like that. Like, am I going to wake up? Am I not? I had all the hope and belief that I would, but there's still that fear. So later that afternoon, woke up and my beautiful wife is standing there. And I'm like, okay, I made it. I feel kind of normal. And so there's that's the story of how I got there, and tried to give you the best version of it I could, but that's how we got to that point, at least.
So then how long were you in the hospital the time that you did get the liver from?
Yeah, so I went in, like I said, got the transplant on September 24th and was able to go home on October 1st. And pretty average, normal stay from what I understand. My platelets were a little bit low, so they kept me for another day or two, but really recovered well and fairly quickly in the hospital, and then up walking around really fast. And then because we were out of town patients, so living in Charlotte, but having the transplant at Duke, which is about 2 hours, 2-hour drive from Charlotte to Duke, you have to stay within, about a 30-minute drive to the hospital and the clinic, just during that really critical time for the first month is what they told us. And my recovery was going so well, and the surgeon felt really great about things. They let me go home a couple weeks early. So I got to go back home officially on October 15th. And so it was really quick. And man, I just so grateful for just another chance to recapture the life that I've been given. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Now, what did you think, though, the first time you heard the word transplant, as we go back a little further into your trip? First time someone said the word transplant to you, what was going through your mind then?
Yeah, there was definitely fear. I'm for sure I'm the less optimistic person. Well, I won't say pessimist, but I typically, as most pessimists do, they say, well, I'm a realist. And so I think there was always this fear of, surgery for me. You hear the horror stories. Even just recently, there was a story of a guy who just went in for a normal procedure, former athlete, and then didn't make it. And those fears are always, for me, they were always there. But I also knew at the most sick I got that I didn't have another alternative, especially as the hospital admissions and the not remembering thing. I mean, as all of those things happened, I knew that there was no other alternative. But absolutely, there was fear, there was uncertainty, there was fear of, okay, if I do make it through this surgery, like what's it going to be like on the other side? You hear horror stories of just how the medicines affect people and their personalities change. And there was absolutely a lot of anxiety with that. Like, am I going to be, mean to my wife? I know when I was before transplant, when I was in the hospital, one of my neighbors, because I was on a transplant floor, I ended up there somehow. And one of the neighbors that I had in the hospital, he just up all night yelling, and it was like he didn't know where he was entirely, but he was yelling at nurses and yelling at family members. And someone came in and said, this is the effect of the medicine on him. And this is before I go into transplant. I'm like, oh my goodness, am I going to be like this on the other side of it? I like to think I'm a kind person, and sweet to my wife and my kids, and I don't want this outcome. That'd be horrible. And so I think there was all of those fears too. Okay, if I make it, at least I want to be as normal as I can. I'm really grateful that, at least at this point, about almost 5 months post, for me, I haven't had really any issues with medicine. All the numbers look really good. I know that's not everyone's story, but I'm really grateful that that's been my experience to this point.
Well, what I've learned through my entire transplant life myself, and I was told this too by my coordinator one time, and it does make so much sense. Everybody has a different body makeup. Everybody has, different chemistries in their body. And so really every story is different, and no two are ever the same, which is good in a way and bad in a way. Cause you can't take the bad things you hear and go, oh, that's going to be me. Or you can't take the good things and say, oh, that's going to be me. Cause everybody has to write their own story.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that was part of me, some of the, groups on social media, I avoided a lot of it because I would internalize so much of it, of thinking, well, that was that person's experience. And what's crazy, and I haven't really talked a lot about this, but I had a childhood friend of mine who we had lost touch over the years, but this has probably been 10 or 15 years ago, but he was one of my best friends in elementary school. We played basketball and sports together. And then, like I said, we lost touch, but we'd become friends on Facebook. And one day he had announced that he had this liver disease. And it's actually the one that they determined that I had. So when I mentioned that the doctor told me that I had cirrhosis back in 2005, it was because I had a genetic disorder. And I didn't mean to skip this earlier, but what they did not know back in when I was born in 1978 was I had a genetic disorder where my liver didn't produce the enzyme alpha-1. So alpha-1 antitrypsin, I had alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. And that's what caused the liver disease that, gradually over the 40 plus years of my life ended up, causing me to need to transplant. But so that buddy of mine, he announced that he had alpha-1, and then a few years later went through a transplant, and then he died soon after. And so I think even that story was always in the back of my head. Like, am I going to, have the same experience? And you're right. It's like, none of us have the same experience. We can share stories. I think for me, the thing that I like to take away, from this, whether it's a good outcome or if it's a difficult road, I'm so grateful. I think that's been the word that has really carried me through this whole process, is just a sense of gratitude. Gratitude, of course, for the donor. I have not learned yet who that person is. And again, I may find out, I may not. I know that's also different for everyone, but just living in gratitude for that person's choice to be a donor, an organ donor. Gratitude for my wife, who is my caretaker and just walked this whole journey. The amount of things that unknowingly and just with my health, but that I feel like I put her through, I just for her to stand by and to really defend me at times and stand up for me when I needed attention, to take care of me with medicines and hospital visits and doctor. All of that stuff, and my kids and how they've supported me, and the community that surrounded us too, here in Charlotte and really around the country. We've had a lot of people who have just supported us, whether it's financially or just with prayer, with support, love. All of it. It's just, whether we have the outcome that we want or not, just living with a sense of gratitude, because for those of us who at least have that experience, we've been given another day. And so I want to make the most of it. I want to make the most of that day. I want to be grateful. I want to love people well. And then hopefully get to do it again the next day and the next day. And I know, like for your story, you've been able to live however many years past, your transplants, but just living with that sense of gratitude. That's been the biggest takeaway for me, that we all can at least have that spirit of gratitude, whether our stories are similar or not.
Now, another question for you too, because I know you spoke of being a pastor at one time. I don't know if you're still working in the church or not, but how did that help you, or did it give you? I mean, well, I'm going to let you because it is your story. How did that help you or hurt you along the way?
No, that's a really question. I think where I had been at that point, so I had not been working in the church for probably a year and a half before transplant. And so we had gone through as a family, I would just kind of put it this way, and not to give too much backstory, but just a lot of things that had really shaken our faith for a bit. We had a beautiful niece of ours who was killed in a car accident. We've had just some other things as a family, some mental health issues, and just a lot of really difficult things that, for me at least, and I can only speak for myself, really shook the foundation of my faith for a bit. And I still remember, this is pre-transplant, but laying in the hospital one night and really just feeling this sense of peace that it was okay to question, like, why is this happening? And am I going to make it? And like, God just being with me, not trying to fix anything. I'm not going to necessarily pray for a certain outcome, but just, hey, God, like, I just need you to be with me, like, just sit with me. And I think, like, taking away some of the preconceived ideas about like praying and asking for specific things, I think that's it for some people. For me, it's like, we prayed for our niece she didn't die right away in her car accident. She died a few months later. And so we're praying for this miracle, and it didn't happen like we wanted. And so for me, it's like, I kind of changed my perspective. I think that I believe that God can heal. I'm not saying that I don't believe that, but I do believe that really more of the miracle for me was like just God being with me through it all and whatever the outcome might be. But I think because knowing so many people did pray for me and our family, it's hard for me to deny that God wasn't at work, if that makes any sense. I think it really
definitely does. Yeah.
It did help me. Not to put like the outcome like on God or prayer or anything like that, but just to say, hey, no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. And it took me a while to get there, but it really did reestablish a lot of that faith. Like, while I look at things a little bit differently than maybe I did when I was pastoring, it's really narrowed things down a little bit more for me. Like, like I mentioned, I just want to love people. That's what God asks of us. He says to love him and love others. And so many times we complicate it. So if I can live every day with a sense of gratitude, loving him and loving other people, I think that will make him happy.
Sounds good to me, for sure. Now, I have talked to other liver transplant recipients, and they always talk about that brain fog for a while, and some have it, for length of time. How is now? You're only 5-6 months out now? Is that what you said?
Yeah. How is 5 months out?
How's your brain fog as of today, and how are things today?
Yeah, for me today, and I love how you mentioned that not everyone's experience is the same. That's been one thing that's been hard for me, is to reconcile of how to live. Everything happened for me so fast. It's like I haven't known how to process it all. I think it's still daily I'm processing, like, what just happened? Like, what did I go through? Part of that is because I feel so good. Like, there are times, like, if I didn't have to take medicine 5 times a day or 4 times a day, I don't know that I would think about it quite as, because I feel so good. I've not had any brain fog. I've had very minimal side effects, some slight tremors from the medication, but they've weaned me down. They've got I was on prednisone for a bit. I'm off of that now. I'm off of some other medicines. There was fear that I was in, not fear, but I had signed up to receive an at-risk organ if that was what was offered, that I would be willing to accept in that risk. And there was concern that the donor may have had hepatitis B, but they have been since determined it was a false positive for the donor. And so it's like, I'm not on the medicine for that anymore. So it's like, I've just had, get back to the faith thing. It's like, it's hard for me to deny that God has a hand in a lot of that. Like I've been really fortunate with all of that. Like the side effects have been so minimal that I think for a lot of us who have had successful transplant experiences, so you don't realize how sick you were until you're on the other side.
That's
and I mean, I feel it's night and day. You know, if you'd have talked to me in this past summer, I mean, I didn't realize how bad I was off, but I mean, I couldn't put on my socks by myself. Walking was so difficult. And now it's like, I can run with my kid. I can, you know, it's been incredible. I mean, sometimes it's hard for me to express like how good I feel. And there's, for me I'm a bit of an empath. And so sometimes it's hard for me to even accept that gift. Like I'm not worthy of this, you know, and I know some people don't have that same experience. It's like I'm trying to be grateful, but I want to brag and make somebody feel bad. It's like, I feel so good. You know, it's been, I can't describe how great I feel.
Now, this is another question. And I think with you being, you know, from a man of God, this might be a good question for you. Cause I do talk to transplant patients like you and they feel good, but they feel guilty because they feel good. And
Absolutely.
I don't think you should, but what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, no, that's 100% has been my experience. And again, I think it's like, I don't know exactly how to express it, but it is that I think it's some of that survivor guilt. You know, it's something that I talked to my sister-in-law about. You know, my niece, who I mentioned, passed away from her car accident. I mean, she went through just this really traumatic brain injury, and she held on for a few months, but just the injuries were too tough. You know, I'm like, it's this 19-year-old girl who has her whole life ahead of her, you know, and it's like, why did she have to die? And why do I get to live? You know, I've had a good life. You know, I want to live longer, of course, but yeah, I want to see my kids grow up and become parents. And, but like, why did I get to survive and she didn't? And so it's been hard. And even the grief that I feel for the donor's family, and again, not knowing that story, but you know, I can't imagine the pain that they feel. And so it's like, to know that I feel so good. There is absolutely some guilt with that, and it's hard to reconcile. And so that's why I just want to be grateful. But I have had a hard time. I think the emotional side for me personally has been the hardest part on the back end. Physically, like I said, when I left the hospital, I mean, it took me a bit to kind of catch my speed back and to get walking normally. But it didn't take very long. I mean, I felt by, you know, my birthday is November. And so by my birthday, I was feeling great, like really, really good. But like I said, everything with my story happened so fast that I'm still now like, now what happened that night when I don't remember? And then my wife kind of walks me through what happened. And so then, yeah, just reliving that whole experience. That's been the hardest part, really. It's like, it's on my brain all the time. Thinking about, again, like the donor and their family and those who have had good experiences and those who haven't. And 100%, excuse me, there's definitely been some guilt there, but I try to offset that guilt with, like I said, as much gratitude as possible. Just remembering, hey, this is a gift that you've been given. Receive it, be grateful for it, and live in a way that shows that gratitude.
I like that. That's good. That's good. Anything else? Because before we let you go here, great story too, by the way, Daniel. But anything that you want to maybe missed or anything else you want to touch on before we let you go today? We're going to give you the platform here to kind of give your as they say, your closing statements.
Well, again, I think one thing that for me that people will come up to me and when I see them out in public or whatever, and they'll talk about, hey, how you doing, man? It's so good to see you. You're like this miracle. And sometimes, again, I don't know how to receive that, but I also I think part of that is like, I didn't really do anything, like I got sick, and the people around me, they're the heroes of the story. It's like the doctors, the surgeon, again, the donor who made that decision to be an organ donor. Like I'm not alive if that person doesn't exist. I really believe that. If that person doesn't lose their life, I'm not living today. I have some friends, some friends in the medical field who said, I don't see a path you would have made it. You definitely wouldn't have made it without a transplant, but if it wouldn't have happened soon, you were in big trouble. And, so knowing that, it's like, I didn't do anything, it's like my wife, she carried me like through this whole journey. Again, my kid, so really honoring the other people of the story. I'm just the guy who laid in the hospital bed, got poked and prodded a little bit, and they opened me up. But I am by no means the hero of the story. But I'm happy to share my story if it's going to help somebody. If it's going to help those who are facing a transplant. If it's helping those who are on the other side of it. But I really do want to make sure that I am honoring those who really had something to do with the process. Again, my wife Melinda, who is just the rock and the light of my life. She really carried me through this whole thing. And again, I wouldn't be alive without the donor, and I wouldn't be alive without her. And so many other people, like I said, the doctors and those. And so those who were just around us. And so I want to make sure that they are always honored, and because it's nothing to do with me. I'm just the guy who was given the gift, and I'm forever grateful for it.
I always like to tell this story. My wife had breast cancer, and so I was on the other side of the bed, and I went through a heart transplant, kidney transplant, and I kept looking at her and saying, I don't like this side of the bed. Please put me on the other side of the bed, because the caretaker side is a really, really tough area to be in. And and I always say, I prefer the bedside than the side of the bedside.
I 1,000% agree. It's not easy to be there, but it's a lot. I do feel like that I don't envy that. And I agree with you 100% for sure.
Well, Daniel, I appreciate you for jumping on the phone and sharing your story with us, and hopefully it'll help a lot of other people. So the best of luck to you and your family, and many, many years of great success with your transplant.
Well, thank you so much, BJ. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Daniel, for sharing your story with us all today on the Gift of Life podcast. And be sure to join us each week for a new heartfelt episode. And if you have a transplant story, email us, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, and also don't forget to like and share this episode with family and friends. And we would appreciate that 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Reminder, my memoir, More Parts Than a Chicken Nugget, isn't just a medical story. It's a survival story filled with humor, hope, and heart. It'll make you laugh, maybe cry, and definitely believe in second chances. Get yours now on Amazon. More Parts Than a Chicken Nugget. Another podcast you might enjoy is myself and former radio partner Bill Stevens. BJ and Bill, the podcast, all on the Podcast Playground Network. We want to thank them for making this podcast possible. Until next time, I'm BJ Odom. Thank you for being a part of our journey and reminding us all to appreciate each and every day and to treasure the extraordinary gift of life.